Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy. This is the Bag Knives Steelcraft Mini Glimpse. First off, though, I actually want to thank my buddy Mike. I wasn't able to make it to Blade Show 2018, and I had a number of friends who were there, and pointing things out like, "Oh, Nick, you're gonna want to check out X, you're gonna want to check out Y down the road." And he had texted me and said, "Nick, you're gonna love the Mini Glimpse. I think they've done a great job here." And so I said, "Hey, Mike, will you pick one up?" And he did. So that's really great of him. Thank you very much for that, Mike. Next thing, size comparison. Here it is against your Spyderco Delica, as usual. Ontario Rat number 1 and Ontario Rat number 2. So you can see here, this is mini only in the 2018 sense, if everything else is freaking huge. But it is not a huge knife, and in terms of handle size, we're actually very similar to the Spyderco Delica here, although I think when folded, the Delica gets a little bit bigger, but you also get the pocket packer in the back there. Hey, whatever. Size-wise, there you go. And then actually a quick note on the blade length here. This is coming in just over 3 inches. I'm sure that somebody could sit there and argue that it's a 3-inch knife if you hold it with the correct angle and whatnot. The thing is, if the cop is angry with you, this is a 3-inch. Oh, this is over 3 inches. So you do want to keep that one in mind. So there you go. Next thing, who's making this guy? This is a Bag Knives Steelcraft Series knife created by Bag Knives. Now, at the moment, it seems that Bag Knives and Todd Bag have actually parted ways for the moment. It's currently being run by Mark, Todd's brother. But they are still making Todd Bag designs as well as some new ones. And so that's what's going on here. This is a Todd Bag design, but Bag Knives is a slightly different affair. Then finally, a quick note. Actually, 2 quick notes. This is made by Rayot. The previous Glimpse was actually made by We Knives, another Chinese maker, but this one is being made by Rayot, who are the makers who did the Steelcraft Bodega, as well as a bunch of other kinds of things. Chinese concern, they're pretty excellent, certainly handle makers, pretty good knife makers overall, but the last one was made by We. So if you're hearing Glimpse and you're thinking no, this one's by Rayot. I actually confirmed that with the Bag Knives folks. And then finally, there is no disassembly of this knife because Rayot hates us and glues their knives shut. So anyways, we're going to go ahead and talk about that in the ugly, but for the moment, let's talk about what's good, what's great, what's bad, and what's ugly. So on the good side, first off, I got to say, thank you for the mini option. Even if this isn't super mini, it's definitely minier, and I appreciate that they're willing to offer the knives throughout the size range for people. This is a nice choice to have. And, so often designs, especially hierarchy designs, tend to be huge and leave out people who live in areas with restrictive laws. So that's a very nice thing. Next thing, the blade on this guy is nice in some ways. It has a hollow grind, which makes it cut a little bit better than you might expect, given the thickness of the stock and the very low grind here. But still, that's nice. It does have a very nice swedge. It's got this fuller with the Todd Baggy sorts of holes on there. The steel on this guy is S35VN, which is absolutely a good steel. And you've got yourself a nice big sharpening choil down here, which is implemented well. So, that's great. Overall, there were elements of this blade that I like very much, and it's a relatively unique design. These sorts of curved fullers are just not a thing that you see very often, so I like that. Next thing, this guy has the cracked ice style finishing. This is just sort of it's a surface finishing process that's done very often on Bag Knives, and you can see it here on the pivot, on this guy here. It's not done on the backspacer, which is brought to a polish and then anodized, but you've got it on the clip as well. And this is a little detailed, but it's a thing that I think is really, it's something that makes this more compellingly Bag, because otherwise, this isn't necessarily, so I like that very much. I think it's pretty attractive too. Next thing, the clip on this guy is excellent. It's using the ball style clip here, which is good. It's got plenty of ramp. It's relatively deep in terms of carry. It works well. It's got spring. I'm digging the clip. No problem there. Next thing, the action is great. Rayot is very good at making actions, both in terms of the deploy, 100% reliable deployment here, as well as in terms of the close. It's a very smooth knife. So this has a great action 100%. Next thing, I gotta say I'm loving the anodization here. You get, for instance, the fact that the inside of this has both the cracked ice finish, I forgot to highlight that, as well as a beautiful purple anodization. The back side of this has more of a polishy sort of look, but still has the purple, and this purple kind of theme offsets the black well, and it keeps this from being a stealth bomber high-speed low drag, hey, another black pocket knife kind of affair, and turns it into something that is artistic. It's using black as a color rather than just making it black because that's what you do to sell to tactical people. And so I think that's a really nice touch. Next thing, the ergonomics on this guy are actually surprisingly good. It curves well in the hand, and given I have smaller hands than most, so keep that in mind, but it curves well in the hand. You've got this little area here for your thumb to land down into. You've got this little bit in the back here, which provides texture both for flipping and gripping. It's ergonomically, it's pretty great, and actually for me, with my very small hands, I can choke up and use this as a finger choil, provided I'm careful, because I'm right at the edge of this choil ability here. But either way, you've got very nice ergos here, absolutely 100%. You've also got very nice chamfers all around here. I mean, every element of this guy is nicely finished, nicely chamfered, on the back of the flipper tab, etc. Just overall pretty damn well done. Can't argue with that. And then finally, I like the fact that the frame lock here is underneath the carbon fiber bolsters. I assume it's still a frame lock. It's either a... Yeah, it's a frame lock. Whatever it is, I like the fact the lock bar is under the bolsters because that means it's basically impossible to place extra pressure onto the lock bar, which increases the detent, makes it a little more inconsistent to flip. That's a great idea, and I like seeing that there, as well as the fact that the bolsters, that the carbon fiber inlays are just as well done on the front as the back. Sometimes companies get lazy and just do something pretty on the front. But anyway, so all of that is the good. It's a frame lock, but it's got that carbon fiber bolster covering the lock bar there. Some beautiful chamfers, nice ergonomics on the whole, good anodization details, great action, excellent clip. The cracked ice finishing is absolutely attractive and makes it a little bit more uniquely Beg. The blade is nice in some ways, and I do appreciate that they're giving us a nice mini option here. On the great side, to me, honestly, is the handle of this. I love the handle, more specifically just in its execution here, because you've got carbon fiber, but you've got really excellent inlay work. This is one thing that Rayot does very, very well, even relative to companies like We9. We tends to do, and I shouldn't be calling them out specifically because other people, but it's very common that you'll see carbon fiber inlays where there are big gaps or inconsistencies. This is perfectly smooth. I like that very much. The inlay work is great. You can see here that the inlay doesn't actually come under the clip. They've got it just well done overall. The purple accents are really nice, and like I said, make this more of an artistic piece than a high-speed low-drag piece. It has a very nice lanyard hole, and that it is very well designed. You can see here that it works. It'll be absolutely beautiful, but even if you don't have it there, even if you don't have a lanyard there, that is, it still looks attractive. There's no issue with it there. The fit and finish on the handle, and frankly on the knife itself, are very, very well done. No one doubts that Rayot makes a great handle, and they've done great work overall here. And like I said, all of this goes to show you that Rayot is by far the best handle maker in China right now, at least for knife handles. And it beautifully shows here. And so to me, what's great about this guy is the level of fit and finish and detail on the handle here, because that's been really well done. On the bad side, first off, this does have a fuller, and it does have the holes here. This is something that I never really loved, just because fullers are a great way to, mix whatever you were cutting yesterday in with whatever you're cutting today. And they're very hard to clean, especially when you got these little holes here. But the thing is, on this knife, I can't really get too bad out of shape, because that is sort of a Todd Begg design signature. And if this didn't have that, I would be complaining about that, because, dude, it's a Todd Begg. That's what it does. And so it's a thing. It's something you want to keep in mind, and it is definitely a little bit of a sacrifice for practicality, but that's the simple nature of this beast, so I can't get too bad out of shape. Next thing, speaking of Todd Begg designs, they are a little bit polarizing. I find that people tend to love it or hate it. Although, actually, on the other side, though, this is a little bit more vanilla than most of Begg's stuff. I mean, if you look at some of the historical knives that the Steelcraft series has done, you get like the Bodega, the Field Marshal, the Kwaiken, where you get these really elaborate Rococo sorts of machining styles, and this one is more, it's a little more vanilla. Honestly, cut this part off here, and this could be a ZT. It's not a big deal, but this feels a little bit simpler, and it feels a little bit less beggy, and it feels a little bit like, I don't know, this is like, it's like going to Dairy Queen for a hamburger. I mean, yeah, you can get one there, but that's not why you go there. And so similarly, buying a very simple, austere sort of Todd Begg knife, it's less austere over here, but at the same time, it's just like a weird thing. Like, what yeah, I don't know. So that part doesn't bring me joy, but that's entirely subjective, and I am crazy, and hey, maybe Dairy Queen makes great burgers. So there you go. By the way, Dairy Queen's an ice cream chain for those of you outside the U.S. They do sell hot stuff, but yeah. Anyways, there we go. Cultural sensitivity note. Next thing, finger choil on this guy is not really a finger choil. I mean, maybe it is for people with little bitch hands like myself, but at the same time, Yeah, no. This is really best thought of as being a sharpening choil. For most people, it's absolutely not going to be a thing. Frankly, the biggest thing that this is a prevention of having the edge stick up into this area here. As it is, you can actually just barely touch the edge there. I wouldn't sharpen that part too much. But at the same time, I think that's really what this is meant to accomplish. If you look at this as a finger choil, you're probably going to be disappointed unless your hands are even smaller than mine somehow. Then finally, on the bad side, this is definitely pocket pecking a little bit here. It's got a very interesting build to it, but yeah, this is going to be pecking on whatever's in your pocket all day. It's offset somewhat by this little drop in here, which makes the prominence of the pecker a little bit less powerful, if you will, but it's definitely a factor in there. And so, to me at least, that's what's bad here, is that it's pocket pecking a little bit. Finger choil is not really a finger choil. The simpler design just seems a little bit weird, honestly. Like I said, you go to Beg Knives for something rococo and crazy rather than something relatively vanilla, frame locky. The Beg designs themselves are polarizing, and the fullers and holes are a little bit of a practical issue, especially if you're cutting into things that tend to be gross or oily or liquid or gelatinous. Cutting gels all the day, I don't freaking know. So there you go. On the ugly front, unfortunately, there's some ugly here. To start with, honestly, Rayot doesn't grind that well in my estimation. What I mean by that is that very, very often, you can talk about a knife in terms of the acuteness of the grind. This is the Demko Knives 8015, and this is a machine ground knife, but you can see here that the edge comes to a very, very, very acute angle there, and so this guy slices very exceptionally well. Whereas on this guy, the edge is, well, pretty wide. Here, I'll see if I can zoom in there. That's the edge angle right there. And again, you see it at the tip, they've narrowed it down a little bit. But I'm not super impressed with this grind. And unfortunately, this is something that Rayot just does over and over and over again. Every time that they grind the blade, they leave it relatively thick behind the edge. And this just means that they don't tend to cut well. It's just not super aggressive in that way and thick behind the edge. And given that this already has a low grind and a relatively thick stock, this just isn't that great of a cutter. I mean, it'll cut, that's fine. But at the same time, using this guy in my everyday life is just like, I kind of want to go back to something that cuts really well. So that's always something that's frustrating, and that's kind of one of Rayot's main sins. That's why I call them the best handle maker in China, not the best knife maker. Another one of Rayot's sins, unfortunately, is that this is thread locked shut with a free spinning pivot. This little guy here, if you put this guy, I'll show you off here. If you put a little T8 bit in here, which is what this is supposed to be doing, what you will see is that rather than unscrewing like a sane knife would, it's just turning the pivot here. And unfortunately, they're using a great deal of thread locker in there that basically prevents disassembly. Now, a lot of people are going to come in the comments and make comments like, but Nick, there's an approach. If you press the knife and tip down against the table and then, you face Ken Onion's workshop and heat it with a soldering iron and then light candles, then maybe you'll be able to get that loose. But the simple fact is, I shouldn't freaking have to do this. I know that there are approaches, but I shouldn't need any. It's like saying, well, Nick, if the wheel is welded onto the car, there are ways to change the tire. It's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't make it a good idea. And Rayot does this to every damn thing they make. They thread lock them shut, and it basically turns these really expensive knives into something that's a little bit more disposable. Because it's like, this is on IKBS. This is using bearings. You will need to maintain this, and they are preventing you from maintaining it. And that is, to me, absolutely and deeply ugly. And it's one thing that, again, just makes me feel like, Rayot, okay, I guess. And so that bugs the crap out of me. They need to stop doing that like yesterday. And so that's a problem. Then finally, on the ugly side, this is a $400 knife. Now, look, when my buddy got this for me, he got it at a table price that was less than that. And I had thought that might have been like an introductory, slightly higher price because this was maybe a limited edition with the cracked ice or something like that. But no, then I look and on your actual knife retailer sites, these are coming in at $400. That's a high price for this knife in my estimation. I mean, if this knife were made by ZT in the USA, that would feel like a high price. And, if We Knives had made this, I feel like the price would be way lower. I mean, the inlay work might, but still, the grind would be better. Anyways, I really feel like this price is very high. At like $325, yeah, absolutely, this makes a lot of sense. Maybe $350, sure. But at $400, it's like there's a $50 bill in the handle here that fell out out before I got it, and that's just not great. And so to me, that price is ugly here, especially given some of the other Steelcraft knives have had this really intricate, beautiful machining. It was just like, wow, I see the work that went into this. This doesn't have that so much, and as a result, yeah, I'm not feeling that price. And so to me, that's what's ugly here, is that this is a $400 knife, yet it is thread-locked shut, rendering it kind of disposable. Yeah, there may be methods, but no, you shouldn't have to use them. It is not, and finally, it is just not ground very well. It's got a nice hollow grind, but ultimately, it is just way too thick behind the edge, and Rayot can do better, and therefore they should. Actually, I'm not sure they can, but they should, at the very least. So, final conclusions here. At some level, I mean, this is a fine knife, and there was a lot to love about this guy. The handle is great. It is a beautiful example of Todd Begg's design work, even if it is dialed back 50 notches or so. It's a beautiful example of Rayot's handle making, with the inlay work, with the cracked ice, with the backspacer, with the inner polishing. I mean, they can do excellent work. It does have a great action, 100%, and it is a nice collection of just materials that really set each other off very well. The blade, the black DLC, whatever handle on here, the carbon fiber, the purple, everything does kind of work well together. It is a cohesive design piece, absolutely. But it is also a knife with some substantial frustrations. The design is a little bit polarizing, but also a little bit vanilla, which is kind of a weird thing to do. Rayot has committed their normal sins of a lackluster grind, glued shut construction, and I'm assuming that some of the price point there is probably the Rayot tax, which is absolutely a thing. The price does feel, but I think the biggest issue here is the price. The price feels like it's kind of lost sight of why these why these overseas collaborations are so exciting and were so exciting. You know, back when these kinds of things started, it was like, wow, we're bringing value here. We are taking designs made by a really high-end custom knife maker, and we're working with an overseas company to bring them to life at a price point that's just like, wow, absolutely. And the other collaborations with Rayot from Todd Begg, Begg Knives, that is, featured these really intricate bits of machining that made the prices feel like okay. Like the Steelcraft Bodega, especially the mini one, I love. I still maintain that that is a gorgeous knife. And I can't wait for them to happen in Damasteel, particularly if they grind them well. But I really like very much that kind of thing. But when it's on this guy, I don't know. If this were perfection incarnate, with no other issues, with every detail attended to, with no serious deal-breaking sorts of flaws, then absolutely. But if they're having some issues, and they are, that price is just kind of a no way. It's a no-brainer. And so, unfortunately, although I think this is a nice knife, and I can certainly respect many elements of the making, particularly in the handle here, it's not a knife that I love. It's never really spoke to me. It's very good, but there were a lot of really good knives for $400 that I think excel this one. And I just don't love the design enough to feel okay with that kind of thing. But ultimately, I have to acknowledge 100% that it is a fine piece. There is nothing that wrong with this. They've done a couple of things that every time just make me angry. But if you love the design, if you're not looking for something to be a slicer and you're willing to pay the price, then by God, you're gonna enjoy this knife. And this is still way cheaper than a custom Begg Glimpse by a freaking mile. And so you've got that going for you. But unless you are head over heels in love with the design, honestly, I think that there are much better knives available for much cheaper and without some of the downsides that this guy brings to the table. So there you go. Hope this has been interesting. I am begging for them to fix a couple of these little issues. But mostly, I hope that you have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of the day. I'm sure they can come up with some creative solutions. Okay. Bye now.